Okay. So, first activity done and dusted. This is pretty much how these 2 days are going to work. Okay. There's going to be like a little introduction to to the activity. You're going to then do the activity, and we have a 10-minute or so feedback session. But really, I mean, the way it's been working now, it's not just 1-2 people presenting, but it's more of a discussion. Okay? Are you all okay with that? I think your laptop is blocking the bottom bit there. Just a little bit. A little bit more. It's okay. You actually have this in your in the learning design guide as well. Okay. So we kind of touched on open learning principles as we went along, but those are very particular things, very particular principles, open learning principles that we try to incorporate in our teaching and learning approach. And when I say we, I'm talking about Sadie. And I told you earlier on, you take on board what makes sense to you. Okay? You have different policies and procedures, a different institutional culture, which will then determine how open you can really be. Okay? So if you just look at the first principle, opportunities and capacity for lifelong learning. I know it's become a buzzword. What does it mean to be a lifelong learner? I mean, some of you have spoken about how you've been doing this for, what, 20, 30 years? Sorry, our colleague, how long?
39 years.
39 years, and still learning. Okay, so and that is what we're trying to propagate or trying to inculcate in our learners, to always seek knowledge, okay, to always learn new things. I mean, I love this saying, and I've maintained this all along. I try to do new things, but also different things. So it's not just about doing things better, but it's about doing better things. And doing better things require you to do new things. Okay, so it's about lifelong learning. I mean, this technological age that we're living in, everything changes all the time. You've got to be a lifelong learner. And if we can just inculcate that in our students, just that mindset that I have not arrived and I'm staying here. We've just got to keep on learning. That's just how the world works. And giving them content. I mean, if you're just going to give them content for the workplace, this is what you're going to need in the workplace. By the time they get to the workplace, it would have changed. So why are we spending so much time on disseminating content? What do we want them to do? We want them to have this mindset that you've got to keep on learning. You've got to be critical. You spoke about surface learning and deep learning. Our colleague, sorry, I'm so terrible with names. But remember, you touched on that. Surface learning, a master student that has not, does not have the basic concepts in place. Why are we so intent on giving them content when they don't know how to learn? And this, for me, is why it's so important to think about the teaching and learning principles before you even get to the tools. What do I want to do with this particular tool? It's about the teaching and learning, and not about using the technology because everyone else is using it, or about because VUT is going this route, the blended learning route. Why do I want to use this particular tool? So it's about the teaching and learning. Then the second principle, center on learners and context of learning. Build on the experience and encourage active engagement leading to independent and critical thinking. We want them to be independent thinkers. We want them to be critical thinkers. But if we're simply going to give them content and we ask them to give that back, they are not going to be critical thinkers. Learners and context. I heard people saying earlier, our students do not do self-study. Somebody said it that side. They don't do self-study. Why is it that they don't do self-study? And how can we get them to get into that mindset? Because if they're not lifelong learners, if they don't have this concept that I've got to keep on learning new things and different things, then what is it that we can do? So we need to understand the context. We need to understand VUT and VUT students. Who are we working with? I mean, when I was at UJ, often people would say, there was this one particular guy, and maybe you know him, Andre, he does the first day experience. He was the coordinator. I've forgotten his surname. Anyway, but he was fond of saying, work with the students that you have and not the students that you wish you had. Because often we do that. We say, no, they shouldn't even be here. They shouldn't be here. They should be at this particular level. Yes, you are probably right. You are right. They should be at a specific or a certain level. At least master student. How can you not even know concepts? But this is the student that I have. So what am I going to do? And I'm not saying the onus is just on you. I'm not saying that students shouldn't take responsibility, because you can push and push and push, and if the student is not motivated or he's got a million things happening in his life, he doesn't have food on the table, he does not have a place to sleep. If you think of all those things, and then you think, okay, so what can I do? Or what can we do together? Or what can we as a department, a faculty, or whatever, what can we do together? Those are the kinds of questions that we're going to grapple with all the time throughout your career. Because you're always going to get different students at different levels. You're going to get and somebody actually spoke about your very motivated students, your Susans and your Roberts. You're always going to have your Susans and your Roberts. Okay? Another principle, learning provision is flexible. What does it mean to be flexible? When you provide learning, and already for me there's a bit of a tension there, a bit of a contradiction. What does it mean to provide flexible learning? And I'm putting the question out there. If somebody can, what's your understanding of flexible provision of learning?
It should accommodate for different styles of learning.
Accommodate for different styles of learning. What else? And you do know, and I'm just putting this out there, but that's a very contentious issue about learning styles. I'm sure you've seen the literature on that.
To allow them to participate in class instead of you doing the whole thing for them.
Exactly. Being flexible, you don't have to be this expert there that knows everything and they just absorb. You allow them to do things. What can you do with this tool that will promote flexible learning? When I say this tool, I mean Butchela.
And also the other thing about flexible is adult learners, people who have commitments, they nurses, they are professional nurses, but they want to come for a postgraduate thing here by us. So do we have those to provide for adult professional people to come to BUT?
Absolutely. I mean, as adults, we know that we come with this rich life experiences. And you don't want to be put in a little box and say, this is how this is the only way to do this. Okay, you need a bit of flexibility. You need to bring, and we're going to talk about the Vygotskian concept of constructivist learning and social constructivist learning. And you build on experiences, okay? You don't have a student that comes to you and the term is tabula rasa, which means blank. They're a blank slate. You don't have those students. They all come with something. And we're going to also talk about target audience. Who is your student? What do they bring with them? Your student. Who are your students and what do they bring with them? And you want to build on that. You come with certain experiences. I mean, we talked, that's why that activity, the icebreaker at the beginning, was about your pathway, where you are and where you see yourself going, and do you really want to be here? Often, if you just take the time to get to know your students a little bit better, even if it's just asking them, why are you here? You know, often they just here to get, because they want a job at the end of the day, they want good money, and we all know there are so many graduates walking the streets that cannot find jobs. So maybe in our day, it worked for us to go and study, get a degree, and then you're guaranteed a job. It does not work that way anymore. So we've got to get to know our students. Who are your students? And how can we accommodate them? And in order to accommodate them, you've got to be flexible. You've got to provide a flexible learning opportunity. And Vutela can help you to do that. You've just got to think about it. It really, remember I said earlier on, I think it was my very second slide, says think, what is it? Think, oh, breathe, think, no. Think, breathe, do. Gosh, I got that wrong. Think, breathe, do. So just think about it. How can you be a bit more flexible in your provision? Prior learning and experience is recognized. I mean, that is already captured in the very first one. Recognize that they come with experiences, they come with something. Build on that. That is how we learn. We build on what's already there. Credit transfer and articulation between qualifications. So that is a bit of a, it's a difficult one because it depends on your institution. I mean, my son, by the way, studied at UJ. He did not finish his degree there. And then he went to UNISA. Where's our UNISA colleague? It's not here.
I'm also with UNISA.
Oh, UNISA. He went to UNISA and now he started all over again. He did BSc Maths and Physics. He failed his third year and then went to UNISA and they still did not get back, at the end of the year, final exams, they still did not get back to him regarding credit transfer. And often we have students that move around, that move from province to province. They go from UNISA maybe, or they go from UP to UCT, or the other way around. And there's often no articulation. And we're saying those are the things that you need to consider when you look at your students. Yes, not everything is in your hands, a lot of it is not. But those are just considerations. The last point there, fair chance of learner success through learner support. Support, very important. Our colleague over here, Derek, is going to work with students, he's going to provide that kind of support. You've got to, in order to guide your student, often students don't know what they don't know. I mean, I could see it with my son. I could see he needs help but he was like, I'm coping, I'm fine, I'm coping. And so that's our students as well. So you've got to know who they are, and you've got to guide them towards the kind of support that they need. Besides the support, contextually appropriate resources and sound pedagogical practices. Appropriate resources, we're going to look at that again, because part of being open is providing open resources. We've got a project that's called OER Africa, and we work with quite a few higher education institutions here in South Africa, but also in sub-Saharan Africa. And we help lecturers to provide open educational resources. Now, if your particular policy says that whatever you produce here belongs to VUT, then obviously you're not at liberty to just share. And I don't know, do you know what your policy says about that? Is there such a policy? What does the policy say? Don't know. No. No. Okay, so maybe you should just investigate a little bit further and just ask maybe your HOD or your dean or whoever, what is the policy? Am I allowed to create, for instance, even if it's just your PowerPoint, how often do you share that with a colleague at UCT or UJ or WITS that's also lecturing the same subject as you? Do you share? Do you have someone at another institution that's doing the very same thing you're doing?
I don't know anyone doing the same thing.
No.
No.
You're working
Teach the
across
learning
institutions.
guides, but not the learning material. But now that has stopped, we're not doing it anymore. I don't know what they are doing
Who is this?
with other institutions.
Other institutions.
Yes.
I know UNISA is going OER route, you know, the open educational resource. WITS is going that route. UFS is going that route. DUT is going that route. I'm not too sure about the other institutions, but often there is a specific policy that will say whatever you're producing, like with your postgrad students, whatever they're producing, it belongs to the institution. I mean, I remember when I studied, I had to write something. I mean, I had to sign something to say that this is actually the property of the university. So if that's the case, then there are limitations. But you can open up your practices. You can share with colleagues, not just within VUT, but elsewhere as well. So being open doesn't just mean sharing your resources, it's about your own practices. And it's about your own, as it says there, contextually appropriate resources and sound pedagogical practices. So it's, you get the OER movement, which is Open Educational Resources, and you get the OEP, which is the Open Educational Practices. And both form part of being open. Both form part of open learning. Okay, enough said. There is an activity on page 5. So let's just go to that. And by the way, this guide has, I'm just taking out little bits and pieces, okay? But this guide stays with you, and you can, in your own time, then go and read. If something doesn't make sense, it's all there. It's just, I don't want to go through it page by page. I'm taking out certain things only. So if you look at the activity, the purpose of the activity is to consider the open learning principles and how they apply to learning design. So briefly, the task that you have to do is to briefly discuss the implications of open learning principles and what they mean to you as a lecturer. Number 2, highlight the principle that you think would be most important for your course and think about why it is important for you. Those principles that I've just been through now. And then give an example of how your own practice may change as a result of adopting these principles. And I'm sure some of you have already adopted some of those. Am I right or not? Am I making assumptions here? So let's see. Go through the activity, and I'm going to give you until 22. It's 25 past, 27 minutes past 11 until 20 to 12, and then we're going to have a discussion. So you can do it, in pairs. The person sitting next to you. You can just have a discussion, and then we'll have a feedback session at 20 to 12. Okay.
Oh, and then the other guy, I was sitting next to you. And then the other one is you understand what I mean? So you never know. No, I don't know if you have a time. Just send me
the open learning principles, activity.
That's very good. You can still do OER on that. It doesn't just mean necessarily you have to come to the whole LMS. As long as like when I was going documentation, we still planning standing documents of how to get there.
Yeah.
How to move there.
Because they are very
Yes. So they have a closed blackboard, but we have our module closed on the blackboard. And then we move in that direction. We just can't code everything around us. Now we're going to destroy the that's the journey at the end of the day. We pull out all the features and then we start making it real. We have to support
That's like very good business.
Yeah.
we have to support to get to there, and we have to understand that it's not about structure, but it's about the content.
Yeah. This whole debate about which comes first. Is it the practice or is it sharing resources? You know, the OED, you see the OED, OER thing. Okay, so if you're not open in your practice, you're not going to share it. Because you believe, this is mine, it belongs to me. There's no share. So they but the one, they go hand in hand, you know. So it's not just about sharing your resources, but it's about sharing the practices and being open to learning with others. So that's the kind of thing that we stress, and especially in relation to community support. Relying on each other.
What's the particular culture of the institution?
Institutional culture is a big thing. I mean,
It's not like trying to change person, how to take them to that. Maybe the GBCs and people come from other places where they can hire on the but to take people that have never been exposed to that concept, you just want to throw them in.
Because often your policies will allow you to see that. I mean, I've been talking about government here when we talked about policy.
Yeah.
And other people are way of thinking about policy without sharing resources. Does it belong to them? Does it belong to the institution?
So when it comes to research, they'll probably be about that.
The research.
But not about design for certain classes. They don't have specific policies about that. But then also, when you look at research, if you look at the amount of emails that is on UT's email about open publishing, people coming about talking about open publishing, promote that, open access. From the library side, we look at research side. It's really glossy.
I mean, just take Unity. If you look at the institution, very open, sharing, and that has a policy in place. Share someone extra life. But then, if you look at individual labels, you will find what they're not sharing. And why is that? Because they believe it's a number of reasons. Firstly, they could maybe know this is mine, I don't want to share it. Somebody will steal my ideas. Or in some cases, I am making myself available, good enough, people are going to teaching, I'm going to so it's a blend of agency, institutional culture. It's that tension between individual agency and institutional culture.
And then I must also say that I do not see the possibility in the POs, whereas you see that institutions open but it's not mentioned. It's not that they cannot put on the expenses, we actually
thought it was other project
Island, yes. So that they no, they didn't know about it. Also, a very much because we did they know about it. There's some of them that they but there's some of them that they know very well that they can publish in the but now for them to commit to it. Yeah. For what it's worth, if it comes somebody, their commitment, something, listening to the person, they give their commitment. Somebody does come with application. So I would say that I put the when we talk about specific these things as research methodologies that lends itself better to the process of how do we start embarking on this process? Okay. What about peer research? Then the other side of nursing is actually training and on that. But how much you don't have to do hardcore training. Then if you have to do hardcore training, then how do research for issues whatever continuous, they want to continuous professional development. They're not going to be able to get that.
Okay, everybody, can I have your attention, please? It's 22, so I think we're going to have that report back. And where do we start? We start with volunteers, or do we just pick on a few individuals? Volunteers? There we go, thank you.
Well, with our discussions, I think it sort of varied. The two of us teach first years. She teaches first years all the way to third, he teaches BTEC. And our experience, BTEC students. Our experience with first years is that first years just come to class, they sit there, you will try and sort of integrate the work, and then you want to get like feedback out of them, but they just sit there and it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he felt that with BTECs, for example, it's a very different experience. BTECs actually, it's not about I come to class and I teach. They actually want to share their experiences and that sort of thing. So, I don't know.
So it depends who's in front of you.
Yes.
Well, it always depends who's in front of you. Context is always key. But also to touch on what you said about first years, why do you think they are like that? They come there, what do they come from? 12 years of what?
They were spoon-fed.
Of being spoon-fed.
No, they were spoon-fed in school, and now they expect to be
Now they
spoon-fed.
expect you to be, exactly.
Okay, but besides being, also, yes, they have been spoon-fed, I'm going to come to you now, but also, how, okay, if I think back to when I was at school, we were told, here's the content, study it, memorize it, give it back to me. And so our students have never been asked to have an opinion. They've never been allowed to have an opinion. So what are they going to do when they come here? They sit back and they want you to give them the information, give it back to, they're going to just give it back to you as is. And that's why you have your postgrad student that cannot think critically. That because they've learned to memorize and they're good at memorizing and they just give that back to you. So knowing what we know, how do we change that? And I think that's the challenge. So can I just give him a link?
Also, if you think about it, Mom has been a high school teacher for donkeys of years. It's so difficult for students or learners in that case to actually fail because they are granted so many opportunity upon opportunity upon opportunity. And they get here and they think it's going to be exactly the same.
Yes.
They miss tests, they miss assignments and all the rest, and then at the end of the year or end of the semester where we currently are, they come to you and they say, oh, but I never wrote test 2.
Yeah.
Okay, now what am I supposed to do about it?
Yeah.
Can't we make a plan?
Yeah.
In high school, if they missed an assessment, they were told you can't have a 0.
Yeah.
So they would be afforded another opportunity, and if they mess that up, there would be another opportunity.
Yeah.
And it comes as a big shock to them that, listen, you've now only got effectively one opportunity to make it. Because there isn't really a clear black and white answer in VUT's policies whether we should or shouldn't give a second opportunity assessment. And the exam is a different story, but your normal formative assessments, there's no clear cut yes or no.
Yeah.
It actually says to the lecturer's discretion.
Okay, so maybe we should keep that in mind also when we think about how we use the face-to-face and online. And can we, because that online component is going to extend the time. Remember we said you can't get away from the face-to-face. That is not going to decrease. But maybe those are some of the things that we need to consider when we use the online facilitation. Do we want to give them just one opportunity or 2, never mind multiple opportunities? I mean, if you look at good assessment principles, it will tell you, give your students multiple opportunities. Realistically speaking, it's not going to happen because it's your time, it's setting different tests, it's marking different tests and all the rest of it. I mean, you know what the challenges are. But are there ways that we can use this tool to extend the time with them and to then perhaps think of giving another opportunity? And it could be the same test randomized differently in the next one. I mean, there are, you don't always want to do that. I mean, you've got to think about what is the outcome, the learning outcome, and how you're going to assess, and you've got to make sure that those align. And in doing that, you need to decide, is there leeway to give multiple opportunities? I mean, you know the challenges. I'm just saying there are possibilities. Maybe you want to say
I
something.
want to say that the last time I was a parent was in the late 90s and in the early 2000s. And they came with the OBE, and now that those children are now, like the one girl, she's now doing a final year medicine. But the type of activities they had was on a much higher level. All the projects and things, I don't know, like I can't believe that people say that the students are actually more spoon-fed. Because my children that I had were like I couldn't believe the projects that they came home with. You know, and the type of application that they had to do in those OBE type of projects. I don't think all of that fell away.
And they still doing OBE.
No, they got OBE, but based on the caps. They put caps into place. But the strands of those activities are still there. The detailed assignments and tasks those children got. I think maybe that a lot of parents do the assignment for the students, but if you as a parent, there's a lot of them that did not get that parents to do the assignments, and they actually have to go and do. So I really don't understand how people can just say, the people, I think we were more spoon-fed. I agree 100% with you, we were so spoon-fed. We just had to do rote learning. Not the students of today, I think it's opposite, but I don't know.
I have children.
Yeah.
And when I look at what they do, and I taught at primary school, at high school, at college, at varsity, anyway. So just my experience throughout and with my own children has been that although things have changed with OBE, they brought in more group work and all of that, and trying to bring in the critical thinking and application. Often, what you said now about the parents doing the work for them, those were the projects I used to get sometimes. And I thought, how can I turn this around? Because I am not expecting the parents to do this. And if they are doing it, then there's something wrong with the assessments I'm setting, the tasks I'm giving them. Maybe it's way above where they are, their level. Or, I mean, it can be a host of things, but often it's the parents that do the work for the students, and not the students themselves. Often it is the teacher having to get through the curriculum and just setting a whole lot of activities and not giving it enough thought as to, you know, what am I hoping to achieve? What do I want the learner to leave with? And if we don't do that kind of explicit alignment, then unfortunately we just do our students a disservice. But in any case, can we get another person or pair to share?
With us, it was almost the same situation as when we were sitting mostly with the first years. So it's a different case that they just sit there and they listen to you and take pictures when you're presenting a class. They take pictures of the slides, on the phones for this, So it's only that they don't go an extra mile to do anything. It's only now when they don't qualify that they'll be looking at you, ma'am, please, I was sick, here's the proof and all of that, but they just sit. But when you go to, I don't have BTech, I only have consultation for research. So it's a different level. They have a lot to say and they ask questions and all of that. The third year, I've got third year, and they ask a lot of questions. They participate in class. They study before they come to class. But unfortunately, we're sitting a lot with the first year, so we just have to do the talking. And it's for me it's a very big group, so I will not have chance to give them multi-group assessment because I've got more than 150 to mark. So if they don't pass, I can't give more than 4 opportunities because I have to mark and mark forever.
But just give an example of how many students. First years
in more than 150 only one subject. And I've got 4 subjects, so I can't.
Okay.
And then in my case, this year I had this situation where we have a new diploma and an old diploma. So this year I had second years and first years sharing one class. So then I have to teach on a first year level and a second year level together. So that's what I did. That was challenging because the second years all used to beauty rules. The first years was more obedient, but then the two groups clash with one another. Second years, if you can give them group work, second years want to click. So there's other challenges as well with the whole working and choosing assessments because I want to randomize the groups and then second years I don't want to be with first years. And then the way they learn as well, and what they got used to in the first year, and I'm teaching in a different way than previous lecturers, so it's a whole mishmash. And some will say, the second years will say, no, last year this lecturer put every slide on Vutela on the blackboard. So, yeah. And then the first year don't know what blackboard is yet, so you have to introduce them to it as well. So for me it was just, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and we're going to talk about target audience very briefly. But yes, it really depends on a host of things. Like you said, even the dynamic of having you this year, but previously it was somebody else. So that's the thing with education. It's just so complex, and you're working with students, with human beings. Human beings are very complex. So the minute you start,
I just made a bit of a
so the minute we start treating them as machines, then it also doesn't work. It's like I'm a person. I come with this, that, and the other. So don't treat me as if I'm a robot or a machine or whatever. There are just so many variables to consider, and therefore you cannot have this cause effect. I mean, all of you that know, and I mean, we all know, and doing research often where there is this cause and effect is very problematic, and where you have the A group, the control group, and the experimental group and the control. It doesn't work because we are human beings, and we are complex, and so it often is a case of being flexible. I mean, going back to open learning principles. If we say this is how it should work, and we're not flexible enough to accommodate the students that we have in front of us, then we're going to have problems. And there are realities. 115 a class. How many opportunities can you possibly give them?
I don't think that's the beauty problem. Really, I can try.
No, that's.
I can just do certain. Like now, you understand? We've been marking. You still be given 3 days to mark. Like a person who's got 20 students. How am I supposed to mark 150 scripts in 3 days? And then submit and take another bunch and submit. So we can't.
So can I just ask, do you have tutors, and are they allowed to mark, or do you have teaching assistants?
The tutors told us that they can only do 20% of the work, which is marking 50% because they only want to mark true or false. So basically we don't have. And you find that you have to go to class 12 hours a week. So when do I sit and set the test and mark? So I only give what I'm supposed to give. I wish I can do more, but I can't. My hands are tied.
Okay, so hopefully,
no, your hands are
explore.
overworked, they're full.
But I'm hoping that with Vutela, I'll be able to do something extra. Maybe give them extra activities, and then they can do the consultation. And not limit only to writing.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to say that I have all the answers. I don't.
I know.
And I would love to say that Vutela has all the answers, but it doesn't. But there are opportunities, and I think we need to explore those opportunities. Because the tool can also help you in your teaching as much as it can help the student in their learning. Okay, so we need to keep all these things in mind, and Faik is very good at capturing all of this. He's got it all there, so that we make sure we address your concerns.
Yeah.
You as a group here, we need to address those concerns.
Just to add on our first question, my experience with you, Nisa, what will happen, we get a group of 200 students, but you'll only realize that out of those 200 students, only less than 50 students will open your activities, and out of that 50, only less than 5 will respond to those activities. So I won't say it's a solution.
You know what, when you were saying that, I was just thinking, when Sheila and I compile the learning design guide, which you have there. So I'm a bit of a minimalist, and coming to my home, you will see minimalist. I don't like a lot of stuff. Earlier on, you asked me, is this venue okay? I said, there's too many chairs here. I'm a minimalist, so I like to, and that's why I put the PowerPoint together, because I wanted to just draw on certain things, and not just go through the, 18-page learning design guide. Often, and Sheila on the other hand believes, give them everything, give them the tools. And yes, so I think for me and her, it's really to find the balance, you know. Minimalist, but giving too much and the balance in between. Often we overwhelm our students with too much, you know. And can I maybe just ask you, who of you here will, after tomorrow, after the one-day workshop, will ever look at that learning design guide again? Probably not.
I will try.
and so
The thing is, we're going to be marking, so I don't think we'll be.
and your students will say the same thing. You know, you give them all the notes and everything.
Yeah.
After that test, do you think anyone's going to look at it again, or the exam?
Yeah.
And that's the thing also about that you need to consider when you use Vutela. It's not to put like a million links. Go and have a look at this video. Read this article. This is a nice website to look at. We give them too much. And I'm a fine one to speak because we're doing so much in this, into just this session. We're doing so much. But the point is that, who are your students? What is possible? I think often we focus on what is not possible. And sometimes you just need to turn that around. Now breathe, think, do. Did I get it right this time? Yes. So really the realities are such that our hands are tied in some cases. And I'm thinking back of this, I'm busy evaluating an initiative, and this initiative is for establishing communities of practice with school principals to build on leadership, the leadership skills. And the thing is that often these principals say, no, we can't do this because we have so much admin to do. We need to work with student discipline and parents that complain and all of that. But as a leader, there is we have management people here, but there is a difference between managing and leading. And often they focus on just managing people, getting them to do this and do that and do that. That they forget that they're actually meant to be leaders. And I think often we get so overwhelmed, if I just bring it back to your context, and having 150 students and how many assessment opportunities can I possibly give them. So if we can try and turn that around and think of what is possible. And to maximize what is possible. And again, to come back to do things differently, but also do different things. Sometimes we need to do different things to make a difference. But in any case, let's get one more and then we move on.
I think mine it differs because I'm doing a second year something called accounting technology.
Yes.
So what they do is we need them to remember what they did in the first year. So you end up repeating the same thing they did in the first year. So I must first teach the fighters to do the computers, which takes them almost 4 weeks. Then you start teaching them computers, like you do open learning. You say, now I'm going to give you an assignment, you go and do it on your own.
Yes.
That's why I gave an assignment, I randomized the amount which I gave each student his own amount. When they came back, 80% of them gave me the same answers. Not even one of them picked up those answers around the same.
Oh, yeah.
So they never opened the computer in the first place.
Yeah.
Only one did it, then all the other ones, they copied it.
Yeah.
I think it's more about the attitude of the students. So no matter how much you try to make it easier, with only one assignment, they can't even sit down and open a computer on their own.
Anyone want to comment on that?
I think we are actually overburdening our students as well. If you look at the amount of modules that engineering students at this stage have, in their first semester, they are doing 9 modules. In their second semester, they've got 8 modules. That's a hell of a lot of subjects. Their third semester as well, in civil engineering's case, we've got 8 modules. S4, they've got 8 modules, and in the S5, they've got another 7. So at the end of the day, it is a ton of work that these poor kids have to go through from high school, where they are used to having only 6.
Yeah.
Okay, some of the subjects are only what we call half subjects. They carry 3 to 5 credits instead of the full 10.
Yeah.
But still, it's time that they have to participate in class, doing homework, preparing for tests, doing assignments, all these things. So if you think about it, they start prioritizing which subjects are critical and which ones are not really that important. And they start prioritizing the stuff like maths, physics, chemistry in their S1, because that's difficult subjects in their terms. And then the other thing is like social intelligence and all of that, which is just theory, which they in any case don't study because it involves reading.
Yeah.
They forget about them.
Yeah.
So we are actually overburdening them completely. And then we
So
are,
the recurriculation.
and we are also over-assessing to a certain stage as well.
Yeah.
We give them 3 tests and a bunch of assignments and quizzes and this and that and the next to kind of force them to participate actively. Because if you just give them these tasks and you tell them, well, it's homework, they don't do it. Because what's in it for me?
Yes.
You have to force them to do it.
It's a good question to keep in mind when you do your.
You have to tell them, listen guys, this is going to be an assignment or a part of your assessment criteria. Then they do it. And they do it half-heartedly because they do not have the time to actually put their full weight behind an assessment task.
Okay. When you said, what is in it for me? That is one principle that you've got to keep in the back of your mind when you set activities for them. Not just for Butella, but why would the student want to invest in it? What's in it for them? The other thing that you said about we're giving them too much, we're overburdening. Yes, that is, I mean, I just spoke about being minimalist and giving too much, and it's about finding that balance. And then you also said that if you tell them it's an assignment or whatever, and they understand that, often your students want to know, is it for marks? If it's not for marks, I'm not interested. And what does that say about our system? That we're so focused on grades. And I don't know if you've read, just yesterday I read an article, you know, Finland has this huge success story of their schools and things work there, right? But they are moving to no grades at higher education institutions. Or some of it. It's just something that they're moving towards. Getting away from grades because they say we have to focus on it. But our students, I mean, I remember when I was at school as well, I always wanted to be, you know, you want to be top 3 in the grade or whatever. So you're so focused on your grades. And maybe we need to rethink that. And that's where the whole recurriculation conversation has got to come in, and the amount of activities and things that we give to them, assessments and so on. I think it's really worth spending some time on. I know that long ago 2014, I think, they came out with the, wasn't a white paper, it was a green paper on extending the 3-year degree to a 4-year and a 4-year to 5 years. I don't know where they are on that debate now. Has it been put into practice? Because they were saying that in any case, your 3-year degree, people take 5 years, 4 years, 5 years. They take longer anyway. So they wanted to formalize that. I don't think it's policy. I don't think anyone has implemented it. They have been experimenting with it, but those are some of the things that we need to consider. Thank you. So, just to move along, Faik, lunchtime is when?
We can just wait for this lady. She's going to inquire about lunch. I'll ask her on WhatsApp and then I'll give you an answer.
Thank you. I just want
I think
to
David
talk about
also
it.
just wanted to say something.
Oh, sorry, Derek. I was standing with my
I've lost
black.
my thought
It was
already.
when she was talking about the large classes and the, when she was talking.
And their classes are small.
Yeah. 150 is small.
My smallest class, 170.
Look, I mean, I think the danger is
Four classes, same subject, 4 classes.
we see all this as a huge big elephant, and we all know that the way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. And I mean, I've been thinking, what are some kind of principles that we can not try and all do at the same time, but just do maybe one thing at a time. And there's a bit of research by 2 people called Chickering and Gamson, and they asked the question, what constitutes good teaching practice? And they basically tried to narrow it down to 7 principles. And I don't want lecturers to do all 7 principles. I think just focusing on one might be a good idea. And some of those principles are, and let me just go through them, is communicate clear outcomes and high expectations. And if that becomes your focus just for that semester, then to me, that's success. And if Blackboard allows you to do that, and I think it does, then you have achieved something. Now, you're not going to solve your marking note and all those other things, but you're focusing on just one bite of the elephant. Another thing is why are students not able to, why are they juggling so many different things? Well, they're trying to complete 9 modules at the same time. But are we helping them focus their time on task? So say, this task should take you a maximum of an hour. And if it doesn't, then you need to work out why this is not taking you. And it's kind of setting expectations around, and I would say just focus on, emphasize time on task, and that be your focus just for that semester. I mean, we all know that teaching, we'll never be perfect teachers, and so we focus on one thing at a time. And I mean, if assessment is really killing you, one of the things would be, how can we use the LMS just to give prompt feedback? And those automatic kind of feedback things are possible. Sorry, you wanted to say something?
I just want to give a bit of response to what you've just said there. Through our whole engineering degree, she will back me up here, we have to conform to EXA standards, and they actually want us to, in our portfolio of evidence of what we're doing for the students, give a clear semester planner to the students. Now, right at the beginning of the semester, we do our full planning for that semester. Yes. We hand it out to the students, specifically saying, at this date, we are doing this and this and this and this. They get all of their project and assignment dates, including the marking rubrics and the topics of the assignment, everything, on day 1 when they set foot in class. So we do set those expectations, as you said, about when the assessments have to be done. And then you find that so for example, 11 o'clock is my class, but they've got another lecturer's class from 8 till 11.
Yeah.
They skip that class because they are not done with their assignments yet.
Yeah.
Then they're scurrying about trying to cram everything in the very last second, where they have been informed about it right from step 0, not even from step 1. So it's their problem actually to get their time management sorted out.
I would agree with you, but for me the question then is, okay, clearly they haven't read the expectations that you have set out. So then the question is, okay, how can we set a syllabus test at the beginning of the semester where you say, okay, we've handed this out, now you've got to complete the syllabus test before you can move anywhere in this. And we're expecting you to get 100% on the syllabus test, and the answers are right in front of you. And it's those kind of things that we need to be saying, okay, can we just focus on that, make that your aim for the semester, is setting up a syllabus test for all those students. And I'm not saying it's going to be a success, but I'm saying that is just one approach that we can start throwing, instead of saying, oh shoot, our students aren't reading the thing, okay, how can we respond to them to get them to think of those? And I mean, I've got a wonderful choice of syllabus tests, and I'm very happy to share those with you. And they're pathetic. I mean, they really are stupid things. Like, what time is my office hours? But what it's doing also is it's prompting you to think, okay, how can I make these things explicit for students as well?
One of our colleagues has actually started doing that as well. He gives out his learner guide with all of the data and everything in it. And then next class, he says, okay guys, we're going to write the test on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they fail.
But we can also, but what I'm saying is we can...
They fail.
And then what does he do as a result of them failing?
Oh, he tells them, well, go and read the thing again. Our HOD comes from TUT, so he's moved about quite a bit. And he said one of his colleagues there used to put in his learner guide, if you come and show me this sentence, you get a 5% bonus on your year mark.
Yeah.
And in the 27 years at that stage that the guy has been lecturing, one student actually came and said,
Yes.
here it is. One. So,
You know, at UJ, I think in fact at Wits also, it's just called different names. It's the same initiative. At UJ it's called the At-Risk, Students at Risk project. And at Wits they thought, you know, at risk has negative connotation, so there's the Road to Success project. But basically what that project aims to do is to check who is at risk and to get to those students very early, you know, within that first 6 weeks. So what they then give them is a test, a quiz on the student guide or learner guide or whatever you call it. And so it is so that you kind of force them to read it, but it also gives you a sense of who has engaged, who has been online, and have they engaged with the student guide. I mean, that's just one simple example of how you could use the system, you know, to your benefit. I'm going to move on to, we spoke about an approach. And it's an approach to designing for open learning. So if you don't go away with anything today, I'm hoping you take away these 5 questions. Because you can just keep it very simple. And in your design, if you keep that in mind, and by the way, which is also that handout that I've just given you now, the review tool. So if you use this, which is really the 5 questions there, we just unpack it a bit more here in this document. 2. I've got one more. 3. Okay. There's one. Yeah, can I take yours? Oh, there. Okay, one more. Oh, just two. She's saying just two. Thank you.
I think that's not the same.
It is the same.
It's the same thing. Okay, then you know,
So when we design, and it's not just for online learning, this is for your face-to-face as well. It's an approach to designing for open learning, okay, which we've talked a lot about what open learning is. So you can use this to design, but you can also use it as a review tool. In other words, once you've designed your module, or your course, or your activity, it can be at an activity level as well, you can use this to make sure that you've covered these things. So the very first question, where do we start? We spoke a lot about our target audience, our students, who they are, what they bring with them, what they are used to, what they are not used to. So we start with that. Who are the students? But in that question is also a reflection on the purpose, the target audience, the authentic context of the learning activities. We just call it an activity system. Don't worry about that. But you know, in this whole system, what is the VUT context? What is the purpose of my module? So this is more at programmatic level. If you think of your program, okay? The first two is more your program. Where do we start and what do learners need to learn? So what do learners need to learn? Some considerations there are objectives or outcomes of a course to assist in making decisions about the content, the structure, authentic assessment, and lastly, suggested learning pathway. So that all sounds very complicated, but just think of what the content, what do they need to learn? And then again, it's not just the content. How will you know that what you've given them, how do you know at the end that they have learned? And that's your next question. How can we help learners to learn? So there you come with your pedagogical approaches and methodologies. What are the learning activities you're going to give them? Am I going to allow them to work together? Am I going to give an open book test? Am I going to give a whatever? Basically, how will you get, they need to learn something. First of all, who are they? They need to learn something. Okay, you are there to facilitate that process. So in order to facilitate that process, you need to help them to learn. And then lastly, so that's your third question, how can we help learners learn? Sorry, then the fourth one, how will we know learners have learned? That's your assessment. Okay? And then the fifth one is, just go down. How can we ensure good quality learning? And as you can see, although it's like step one, question two, it's not as simple as that. It's all intertwined. Quality you're not just going to consider at the end. If you think about who your students are, you need to already think about what are the types of activities I would give them. What is the purpose of all of this? How can I make sure that what I want them to know at the end of this aligns with the assessments? Often we say you need to be able to do X, Y, Z. But then when we do the assessment, it does not align. We ask them to do something else. So basically, when you design, if you can just keep those questions in mind, start with context and who your students are. Think about what they need to learn. Think about how you as the facilitator can help them to learn. Then you think about how you will know, what evidence will show you that they have learned something. Okay? And within that, ensure quality throughout the steps. Then I think this is a good guide in designing your activities, in designing your course, your material, your program. So this is the extended version of it. So it just unpacks each question for you. Where do we start? And then it tells you, so where do we start is part of your planning. And your planning starts probably the year before. Or when does your planning for first semester start? Is this not part of the planning now? Right? So in your planning, you have to clearly describe for each program course module the qualification, the mode of engagement, the purpose and outcomes, features of the learning environment, staff responsibility. So it's all of those things that forms part of your planning. So that's where you start. If you go to page 2, what will students learn? So how do you decide what students will learn? And I really don't want to go through each one. So what I'm going to do is, we're going to go to the next activity, which involves using this. Okay? Actually, it's that one. I think let's do this first, and then we'll come back to the framework and Bloom's. Do any of you use Bloom's taxonomy when you set your activities? You all do. Everyone's nodding. Okay, so it's worth coming back to this. But look at the review tool on page 6. Sorry. Okay. The purpose of this activity is to familiarize yourself with the 5 design questions which I've just gone through. The task is familiarize yourself with the review tool and identify the elements. Okay. You will see 5 questions, elements, and criteria. So just go through that. Highlight those criteria that stand out as important for you. This can be quite overwhelming. I did this with African Nazarene University, they in Nairobi. And they just found it way too overwhelming because it's not everything applies to them. It really depends on your discipline, on the way you work, and so on. The bigger questions, yes, does apply to everybody, but not all the elements. So highlight those that stand out for you, and what are some of the obvious design implications for your course. So when you design your course, how can this assist you in that design? Okay, I sense a bit of like a drop. And I think it's time, we have 35 minutes before let's take 20 minutes to do this. Let's do 15, and we'd rather have a discussion, and that should take us up to lunch. Okay, is that okay?